What's going on, youth? My name is Claude Marcelin. We're back at it again with another banger episode for you with the one, the only, the infamous Samuel Ramos.
It's actually pronounced infamous, but what's going on, everybody? Again, Sam here with you guys, joined alongside with Claude. Welcome back to the Conversemos Podcast. We got a couple of questions that you guys went ahead and sent to us, so we just go ahead and just dive right into them. So, first question we did go ahead and receive, Claude, is what is a youth ministry? What does that mean to you?
Well, on the surface, a youth ministry is just a collection of people ranging in ages from what do we have, 13 to 25.
Normally kick them out at 25.
26, 7, something like that. And so, that's what it is on the surface. But to me, it's a lot deeper than that. A youth ministry is a bond, a relationship. It's more like a family.
Okay. It's
one thing to just gather around and talk about the Bible, but it's another thing to actually talk to each other and build relationships with each other. If you come to church just to hear the word, that's one thing. But coming to church to actually be involved and divulge and immerse yourself within the culture, it just changes your whole church experience.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that too, because it also gives you a chance to build community with other folks, like-minded individuals as well. Because we can have friends who are outside of this scope, but when you make friends who are within the same things and who are involved in the same things as you are in church, it just makes church a lot more fun, a lot more easy per se to come here.
Yeah, especially playing soccer. Honestly, I feel like if we weren't playing soccer, I don't think we'd be as close as we were.
Yeah, no, I definitely figure that for the guys. For guys wise, we do play soccer mostly every single Sunday afternoon. And it's just all the guys from the youth, and that's exactly how we bond. We also realize the girls kind of have danza going for them, but they usually do that on Monday nights. But it's a good time to just go ahead and have your friends and spend time with them.
Yeah, especially the parties too. The parties be banging, man. Especially the Christmas party. Even though they low key cheated us at the last Christmas party with the gingerbread thing. I was still mad about that 2 days later, bro.
It's crazy. Hey, shout out to Angie, Jency, and everybody who's always doing the parties and the get-togethers. You guys are some real ones for that. We appreciate you guys. Y'all get another horn, man. We'll throw another horn in there for you guys, But that'll go ahead and basically sum up what that is for us. Youth ministry is just a place where you guys could go ahead and get together and have a good time with like-minded individuals who believe the same thing that you believe, but who can also guide you and help you with your spiritual walk with God, because sometimes we do get weak, and you need someone who can give you that uplifting word, and get you out of your troubles.
Yeah. I think that guidance part is one of the biggest parts though, because me, Alan, Eric, even we always tell each other, hey, you come to church today, and just having a friend like that holds you accountable really.
Yeah,
it really changes your experience.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, having friends that hold you accountable, because you guys definitely do hit up each other a lot to see who's going to end up coming to church or not. So yeah, no, it definitely makes youth fun, and to us, that's pretty much what youth ministry is. We got another question that someone sent in. They said, why should youth be encouraged to participate? I think that's a loaded question.
That is a loaded question. It's participation. It's all volunteer. You're not pressed to do anything. But I feel again, it just changes your experience and your outlook on church. For example, going to school. You could go to school and sit down in school, listen to the teacher, whatever. But are you really grasping the information?
Yeah, that's true.
And so. For me, I know the big example for me is I used to go to math class and just sit in math class. And then when it came time to go to the next math class, I would just be completely cooked. It was so bad. But once I learned that, you really have to be involved in order to really understand the material, and it'll make your life so much easier. I feel that same logic applies here at church.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel there's areas that church has that haven't been I guess been up to the highest standards per se, but that's because nobody wants to go ahead and dive into those classes or take accountability and do things like that. And I feel doing stuff like that in regards to participation, it helps you grow and develop as a person. Not even if you take church out of it, you're growing even you're in self, you're growing up, you're being held to a certain standard of all right, I have to be responsible, I have to mind myself, I have to learn how to control myself. You teach you self-control, that's the word I'm looking for. So it's transferable to anything that you do outside. But I think it's really important for youth to go ahead and participate in their church, because you get to learn probably one of the most important things is how to serve. And it's like, not serving yourself, but serving others and putting others before yourself. And I think that's just something amazing that church can definitely go ahead and teach people.
Yeah, and quick promo, we're about to get a lesson about that on tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I think that's like tomorrow.
Yeah, the washing of the feet. Well, by the time this comes out, it won't be tomorrow anymore.
Yeah, no, it won't be tomorrow. It'll probably be like Thursday or even next week. But you guys will get the message for those who come on Wednesday.
Yeah, so hey, that's why it's important to come on Wednesdays. You get cool classes like that, and it's not washing feet. It's not just about physically washing your feet, but it's just about the humility. That's the word, right?
Yeah, it's humility.
The humility of it. When Mary washed Jesus' feet, right?
When Jesus washed the disciples' feet.
When Jesus washed it was with the perfume first, right?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. I think that's two different stories.
Is it?
I can't really remember right now. We'll get back to you guys on that.
Later. But it just shows like the humility and the servitude, And Pastor talked about that too when the leadership class.
Yeah.
Leaders class. And I feel like classes like that too. If you ever get a chance to take a class with Pastor, always take it. Like I promise you, it won't just help you in church, but outside of church too. Like
it's definitely an eye opener too. Like and not to go off topic, but even if you take classes with the pastor, it's like you get to know him and understand him a little bit more on a one-on-one level versus like a pastor to member type level. Like you get a more in-person interaction with him, so you get to understand the guy. Yeah. But it kind of dives into like the third question that you guys went ahead and set in. What does youth shape, or I'm sorry, not even what, how does the youth shape the identity of the church?
Man, that's a deep question. I feel like, each department really just plays a part in every church, from the niños all the way to the cleaning team, to the evangelists. Like I feel like we all just play a part.
Yeah.
And it definitely shows when one team isn't playing their part.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, like the cleaning team isn't doing their part. We have a dirty church, and then when people come to the church, they'll be like, "Oh, this church is dirty. Why would I want to come here?"
Yeah, but like in regards to like the youth side of things and how does that shape the church, I feel like as youth, as much as like you guys are a little bit sometimes like knuckleheads, but like you guys also bring a certain level of life and a new perspective to church too. Because let's say the biggest example would be like this podcast. This podcast would not be possible if youth were not involved, because maybe some people have an understanding of how to run cameras and computer programs and softwares and things like that, but putting it into action, maybe they don't have the time. But as youth, you guys have a little bit more time. Not saying you guys don't have no time at all, or you guys aren't busy, but you guys probably have a little bit more time in your schedule to go ahead and help out. And that's how we were able to go ahead and get this podcast up and going. It's just, keeping the church alive and well. It's like keeping a body well in shape. You guys keep the church up and going. So I think that's amazing. And I think that's how youth end up shaping the church. Like, whenever someone's tired, you guys go ahead and say, "Hey, I'm ready. Let's go ahead and go. I'll go if you go. I'll do this if you do this." And, like getting others involved, it helps the church, and it brings a sense of fresh air to church.
Yeah. I feel like another really big example is music. We bring a lot of new songs over to church, and a lot of them gets played over and over, and so not saying it's bad the way we play music, but having different styles of music within the church, I think it definitely takes worship to a whole new level.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Let's see. We got another question that just came in. How can the church support the youth? Man,
it's more like a you type question.
Man, I don't know where to start, but in all honesty, I feel like church can definitely go ahead and support the youth by just listening. And I think sometimes a lot of adults, after they've obviously they've grown up, they kind of forget sometimes what it's like to go ahead and be young and to sometimes make mistakes, or to, tell someone like, "Hey, don't do that." And the young guy or young woman or they do it anyways. I think if people would take the time to listen to somebody and hear their story and try to have some empathy on what their story is like, that would definitely help out a lot of the youth. We got some youth that do come from, from different countries, and they're here by themselves. So, of course, they're going to try to grow up they like, you know, try to grow up the best they can on their own. So they probably don't have the best example wherever they are staying. So as a church, I think it's our job to be a community for those folks who come over here who don't have a mom or a dad here beside them. You know, and it's just coming together. And I think that's definitely like, you know, something the church can go ahead and do is just, you know, listen a little bit more, have some empathy, you know, be there for them.
Yeah, I think we're starting to no, in the past years it wasn't really like that, you know, it's just you and Chu, but I feel like now having the amount of leaders that we have, you know, with the amount of experience, I feel like it's definitely gonna provide more support.
Yeah.
You know, because it is a lot of youth. It's a lot of youth to keep up with. And so, you know, especially with like Emmanuel Hoya, like the way he conducts himself is definitely like a really big role model for a lot of youth. Emmanuel Naum, the way he acts, the way he conducts himself, the way he's always like showing his presence in service, I feel like, you know, it's definitely a big help. Like, and also I just feel like as a church we just need to just be there for the youth more and just show up more for youth events, you know.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that too. Like, and it's got like, you know, just to backpedal real quick off what you said too, like, you know, how these different adults now that we have who are part of our youth ministry help us out. Like, it makes it easier for youth to identify themselves with somebody else. So it's not always having to identify themselves with strictly one person, but you can identify yourself with multiple people. And I think that's an eye opener. You know what I mean? And you know, where I guess you could say one person might not be the strongest, so another leader can be stronger and they can help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I feel like it kind of also breaks down that barrier between like youth and damas or youth and caballeros. You know, it's like we're all in this struggle together.
Yeah,
you know, that makes sense.
No, it definitely does make sense. I definitely agree with that. You know.
And our last question: what advice can you give to a youth that wants to participate?
Oof, let's see. I mean, that's gonna be probably a quick and easy one. I would say first and foremost, you know, be active or come a little bit more to church, and when people are able to go ahead and see you and see how, you know, how God is changing you, it opens up the door for different types of participation, regardless of what you're into, whether that's singing, playing an instrument, working in the sound system, working with the kids, decoration, you know, the list is endless. So, I mean, first and foremost is being there, and then also like, you know, having that willingness to help wherever it is that God has called you to help.
Yeah, I think like definitely what you said, but also, you know, like just read your Bible, you know. In anything that you're going to do, you're definitely going to need the Bible. But I feel like a very big verse you should back yourself on if you want to participate, especially as a youth, is 1 Timothy 4:12. You know, that's a very, very fundamental verse. And, you know, it's our verse for our youth.
Yeah.
And it's our verse for a reason. You know, if you ever get a chance, read it for yourself. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 12 to 14. I believe that's the whole
that's
thing.
Us.
That's the whole thing. It's a very beautiful verse. And you know, and don't be afraid. You know, it's in the back of your head. Let's be honest. You're probably going to think it's lame at first. You're going to think it's lame. You're stage fright. You don't want your friends to see you like that. But you got to understand, you know, when you're in the grave, you're in the grave alone. Salvation isn't shared. Salvation is personal, you know?
Yeah.
You're not going to heaven by pleasing somebody. You're not gaining salvation by pleasing somebody. And so the sooner you get that idea of I'm here doing this trying to please you instead of trying to please God, as soon as you get rid of that mentality, things will be so much easier for you, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, like that's the mentality I had at first.
Yeah. Before,
you know, I started doing better. But, you know, I used to have this mentality that it's lame, you know.
Yeah.
Watch people go up there, it's lame. Like, wow, why are you doing that? Like, sit down. It's weird. But as you start to grow more spiritually and just grow more with God, you start to realize that it just changes you as a person, changes you for the better. It definitely changes your output on life and has you think about a lot of the things that you do and a lot of things you used to do.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I 100% agree with that. We got one final question that came through. It says, if you could give somebody one reason to come to a youth service or a regular service, what would it be? For me, it would be prioritizing what's important to you in regards to like coming to church, because whatever we did, like we dictate how our schedule is going to go ahead and be. So if I want something like if I could go out my way to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning to be at Washington D.C. by 11 o'clock in the morning to watch a soccer game, then I can wake up at 9 o'clock and show up to a church service at 10 o'clock. Like, it's how you prioritize things. It's whatever's important to you is what you're going to go out your way to go ahead and do. If you find yourself, oh, like I'm having issues with going to church. It's too early. It's too this. It's too that. Well, it's because it's not on the top of your priority list. So I would definitely go ahead and say, like, figure out what's important to you. And if church is something that you want to be important to you, then make the time for it. Again, it's a benefit to you. You're learning how to go ahead and be more like Jesus and grow, mature, and not just in a regular aspect sense, but in a spiritual dang, I can't even say it. in a spiritual sense as well, There's a lot of people who are like, grown with age, but who are still young kids when it comes to the church side of things. And especially if you've been coming to church or if you've known about God for the longest time, if you see that you haven't progressed and you've seen that you've digressed, then, it's time for you to go ahead and get yourself aligned, get yourself together. Like, you can be grown again by age, but you could be a baby still in church. And, at some point you got to go ahead and again, comes back to that prioritization. Like, church, if you want church to be important to you, then show it, like, demonstrate that it is going to go ahead and be important to you. Make the time for it.
Yeah, definitely, and also, like, to piggyback a little bit off of what you said, just it's 24 hours in a day. I don't know what 7 times 24. I can't think of it on the top of my head, but that's how many hours are in a week. And realistically, it's only 2 hours out of the day. It's not that long. Seriously, not that long. It's only 2 hours out of your day. You could go on with your day about that after that. But also, I think another analogy that was given to me years ago was, if you have a cup of water, right, and you only got your cup of water filled one time, you're going to be thirsty for the rest of the week.
It's true.
But if you get your water filled constantly throughout that week, you're not going to be thirsty. And I feel like it's the same way with the word of God. If you could receive the word of God on Sunday, but what's to say you're going to remember what pastor said like 10 minutes after you leave service, And so I feel like once you start coming to church a routine, it's going to be a lot easier for you to stay in church and stick with it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. But, aside from that aspect side of things, I would say, like, come for the community side of things, get to know somebody, become friends with somebody. And I promise you, looking forward, kind of like what Claude said, like, he'll call, like, a couple of the guys, like, like Alan and Claude, Alan and Eric, and see, like, what they're doing if they're coming to church, and they say, yeah, like, it gives you something to look forward to. Like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sit down and listen to the word, but at the same time, I get to go ahead and see some of my friends, and maybe after church, we could go ahead and do something, whether that's go out to eat or, go out and play some soccer, or, just do something together after church. It's always like, it's a plus side of things. So, that's definitely another reason why I would say, I would try to motivate people to come to church,
Yeah. One more thing I just want to add. It's not a question, but, one thing I would like to see a lot more is I want to see a lot more youth go to the front after when they call for prayer.
Yeah.
I feel like we just stay in our seats because we don't see our, like, who we want to see go up there. Or we just like, well, I don't need prayer today, so I'm not going to go.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like somebody, like, it'll take, like, that one person to go ahead and make an icebreaker. Like, maybe it's because folks are shy to go ahead and go up. Or maybe, at their seat, they're still trying to meditate on, like, should I or should I not go up? But, it comes down to being an individual choice, Of course, you can always pray, from your seat. You can pray when you get home if you like, but there's something about going to the altar that makes it special. It's more so like, man, this word that, whoever it is preached, like, really touched my heart. And God, like, here I am, I'm on my knees. I'm here crying out to you. Like, I need you. And it's more so like an intimate and special moment with God. So, kind of like what Claude said, I encourage you guys, if you ever have that feeling, just go up to the front. Nothing bad's going to happen to you at all. Trust me, nothing bad can happen up there.
Exactly. The worst that will happen is that you're just going to get a little oil on your forehead. Like, just after it. Like it's I promise you, nothing bad is going to happen to you. But that wraps up episode 2 of the Conversemos Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another banger of an episode.
Oh, sorry. I felt late on that button, but like Claude said, we appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys here next week on the Conversemos Podcast for episode number 3. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and put anything in the comments down there, like what you guys want to go ahead and talk about, what you guys want to go ahead and see on the show. But until then, we are out, and we will see you guys next week.
See you
later.